everyone's different. What's your talents and gifting? You are unique in your own way. Don't you mind what people say? So shine your colors bright, shining brighter than ever, and live your best life and do whatever you want. So shake those haters off. You're an eagle so soar and rise above. Shine bright, show all your colors. You're not a carbon copy, so show them what you shine bright. Live a vibrant life, live vibrant with Sandra. Shine bright, show all your colors. You're not a carbon copy, so show them what you shine bright. Live a vibrant life, live vibrant with Sandra V.
Hi, and welcome to Vibrant. I'm your host, Sandra V, and I am so excited to be here with you today. We have a great show in store. We're going to be talking about domestic violence, and I've got two wonderful young ladies that are here. They've started foundations to intervene in those types of situations, and you're going to hear some information that I know is going to take your knowledge of this subject to a whole nother level. So today I have on location Kandee Lewis, who is the CEO of
the Positive Results Corporation.
As well as her program manager, Kelli Dillon. So help me welcome them. Welcome, Kandee. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Dr.
And
Sandra.
Kelli.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Sandra.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys so much for agreeing to come on the show.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for really taking the time to understand what domestic violence and sexual assault is and how it impacts all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kelli, you want to greet our audience?
Hello, everyone. Yes, as Dr. Sandra said, I am the program manager over the Pieces of the Heart program, which we help young women between the ages of 12 to 25, which is our transitional age youth in Los Angeles.
Okay.
We help them with the trauma of having gone through or experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, sex trafficking, as well as gang violence.
Wow. That is a mouthful. And you know what? I can't wait to get to sharing this information. So first off, share with us about your corporation and what, prompted you to start what you're doing.
Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah.
So the Positive Results Corporation was formed in 1991 by my brother, a Los Angeles police officer. And its original mission was really to work with those youth who had been involved in gangs.
Sure.
We often think that gang members aren't good people, but these children were really looking for a family. So I became the executive director in 2008, and we changed the focus after doing a couple of years of a needs assessment to understand really what's going on in the community now.
Sure.
And we realized that there is a huge problem with violence, and no one at the time was looking at children involved in violence, teen dating violence, sexual assault. And so we changed our focus, got some wonderful people to work with us, and so now our mission addresses teen dating violence, sexual assault and bullying in youth and communities of color.
Wow. So am I hearing you say that the violence that we were seeing on our streets were actually a byproduct or a result of violence that was going on in the background of some of their lives?
Absolutely.
Am I hearing you say that right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. So when you talk about violence, and we're talking about most violence does begin in the home.
Okay.
And we have a belief that violence and abuse begins in the womb because those women who are in abusive relationships, when they become pregnant, then the likelihood of them being further victimized goes up to 66.6%. And sometimes that abuse is so horrific with them being pushed downstairs and burnt, pushed out of cars.
Wow.
And so if they are abused, their children are also abused.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times when those children are born,
Mm-hmm.
you start to see different things. Some of them are very aggressive and very violent to their siblings, to other children, even
So
their
you're
parents.
saying that violence is being transferred to them even in the womb?
Absolutely.
My goodness.
Absolutely.
That's powerful. Wow.
And then you also have some children that they have disassociated themselves from their parents. It's a safety mechanism.
I
So
got
in
that.
order to survive,
Mhm.
although I'm inside my mother's womb, I'm not going to be attached to her.
Wow.
And so that child comes out and they're further detached.
Wow.
They, some people call them very quiet or
Mhm.
reserved, and they don't know how to interact with other children.
Right.
They will subsequently, not always, but very often become very aggressive or violent.
Wow. That is amazing.
And also understanding that if a child is experiencing or an infant is experiencing domestic violence inside of their mother's womb, then I'm pretty sure that the domestic violence is and the experience of it still going on in the home once the child is born.
Absolutely.
And so when a child, like you said, like Kandee said, detaches himself for survival, but also understanding that the mother is still having to survive or the father is still having to survive during this time of domestic violence and trauma, so they can't even engage in the child on an emotional, spiritual, mental, or even physical level to the capacity that an infant needs in order to sustain a healthy development.
My goodness gracious alive. And you know, I never thought of it in terms of the womb.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I never thought of it in terms of that. So that's eye-opening even for me. And I can only imagine that it's eye-opening for, you know, some people in our audience as well. As well. So now, has domestic violence touched either of your lives? And that's kind of what also prompted you to really get involved and be as passionate about it as you are?
Well, to a certain degree, yes.
Okay.
So domestic violence has, in my opinion, has impacted every single person. Personally, I was in a verbally and emotionally abusive relationship. Now, I can't blame it all on my husband because I was also emotionally and verbally abusive.
Got it.
It became who's going to get who first.
Wow.
And so as our relationship continued and we sought help, and so now we have a much better and healthier relationship.
Wow.
Very high.
Wow. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
Kelly.
our children, they also learn coping mechanisms. Just like how if we are in a relationship, we learn how to either forgive or to return back into the relationship or to go on the next day, fixing the food, taking the kids to school or whatever. A child has to also learn how to cope with what just happened the night before, the screaming, the hollering, the knives being thrown, the parents fighting and duking it out in the living room. And then they have to go back to, this is my mother, this is my father, this is my two parents or whoever, and they have to learn how to cope as well. So like Kandee said, does that make them more susceptible? Probably so, because we at that point taught them how to cope in dysfunction.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's
and one of the things, you just said something I think I almost forgot. But one of the things that happens when children are coping, they're learning all of these techniques. And we often think with children that they're little and they don't hear or they don't understand what's going on. But even the youngest child, they could be a year old, 2 years old, and they will react. Whether they react positively or negatively, they're going to react to all the violence.
Wow.
And you know what? As you was talking, it made me think of something. It also made me think of how when a child is learning, he's learning or she is learning about power and control. Who has the upper hand? Who is on the bottom? They're learning how to aggressively get their needs met. They're learning how to manipulate
So in other words, if
situations.
just asking isn't enough,
Yes.
then they learn behaviors that are going to get that
Right.
attention that they need.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So if mom comes in and tells dad, hand me that, like, and give it to me now, like what, whatever, and then he sees a response, then he learns that these aggressive techniques work. And that's the only thing that kids are learning. They're learning to get their needs met, and they're learning what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
And at that point, by the time they're 5, they learn that violence works.
Right. Are you kidding? My goodness, that's amazing. So now, what are some of the red flags or some of the warning signs that a person can look for if just entering into a relationship, that there's a potential for, domestic violence?
You want to start?
Well, I can start.
Okay.
It was something that you said when you were asking, like when we talk about the language of domestic violence. A lot of times when we think about domestic violence, we think about an abuser and a victim, one that is receiving the abuse. Very rarely do we think of domestic violence as two aggressors.
Got it.
As two people that are mutually aggressive, mutually violent. As Kandee said, I gave it and I took it, right? But so when it's hard when you are coming from a background yourself, because like you said, what are the red flags? We're talking about teens and young adults that are now entering into a relationship.
Right.
So if it's hard to really identify red flags at that point, if I have learned how to, like I said, to cope, to survive, to live, to love in an unhealthy and a dysfunctional relationship.
So in other words, if that's the person's norm,
yes,
then they may not see certain things
red
as red flags.
So that's what I'm saying. So when we talk about red flags, what may be a red flag to someone who has been in a healthy relationship or know what a healthy relationship looks like, it may not be that red flag for someone who has been left, who uncle and auntie, who mom and dad, who sisters and brothers or whoever have. This is the way we communicate. This is how we talk. But I'm going to speak on a couple of red flags that I'm going to hand it to Kandee.
Okay.
A few red flags for me, because I was an actual victim of domestic violence.
Okay, so it has touched you.
It has touched me. I was 17 years old when I got into a domestic violence relationship, and I was 18 when I was married. Through the pressure and the tactics of manipulation and power control of my abuser, who was a few years older than me. But one of the red flags in which my intuition, something in my gut went off, was his possessiveness. I knew that at the time that he was a little bit too possessive. Like I had to pretty much be aware. I mean, not be aware, but more so tell him what my whereabouts, kind of give an account of my time.
Right.
But then also I had these other factors going on in my life in which I felt that the possessiveness was that I was needed, I was wanted, and I was loved. So I could not identify it as possessive. I just thought that he really loved me. He really wanted me, and he was scared to lose me.
Sure.
Another red flag that
which could be true to a degree, right? But it just was imbalanced.
It was imbalanced.
Yeah.
Another red flag in which I experienced was when he would lift me up, encourage me, admonish me, right? But then when I didn't do what he wanted me to do, then it was the tearing down, the belittling, the ballooning, the shaming of who I was. So that's another red flag to look at.
So that's going back to what Kandee was saying with the emotional and the mental.
The back and forth. So when you're seeing someone that you were comfortable and safe with who you was and your vulnerabilities and telling them information that may have been trauma for you in your life, and then that very information is then thrown back at you to tear you down and to point fingers and to bring about guilt and shame. That is definitely a red flag.
Right. Absolutely. There's so many different types of red flags. So for instance, there's the one where your partner may be really loving and sweet to you, but rude, mean, and aggressive to everyone else. For instance, we're going out to a restaurant and he's treating you nice, but he's short-tempered, he or she, because violence and abusive relationships come in all shapes, sizes.
Right.
And so the server may be at the brunt of receiving rude or mean, aggressive behavior.
Okay.
I was in a restaurant one time, a coffee establishment, and there was a young man who came in and was just nasty to his girlfriend. And she didn't see these red signs. Everyone else did.
Wow.
He was fussing at her. He was cussing at her. He actually took the straw. And you know how they have the little tip of the straw on it, the paper?
Mm-hmm.
He put it in his mouth and spit it in her face.
Oh, my. Okay.
And so he was really just preparing her for more violence to let her know that no one in here is going to do anything to help you.
So at this point, he's testing his boundaries, so to speak. How far you're going to let me go, first of all, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There's also the signs of if that person is texting you too much. So we might say, oh, this person really, really likes me, and they're spending time with me, and they want to know what's going on. But the difference between just being caring and being overly protective or overly aggressive, they're texting you 10 times an hour. That's too much.
Yeah, that's a lot.
If they're telling you what kind of clothes you can wear or where you can go, that's a sign.
Okay.
If they say things like, you know what, I hate your mama and your mama hates me, that's a sign.
Oh my goodness. Wow. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back with Kandee Lewis and Kelli Dillon, and we're going to continue learning about domestic violence. So come right back. Hi, it's Coach Sandra V, and I'm reaching out to just tell you the difference between having a mentor and having a life coach. A mentor is someone who usually specializes in one particular area and helps you to develop that. A life coach takes your entire life into perspective, where you are, where you want to go, and helps you map out a doable plan for you to accomplish what you'd like to accomplish. So give me a call and let's get coaching.
Are you looking for someone who can display your unique sense of style? Hi, I am Felicia Douglas with Devin Smiles Photography. I am the photographer that comes to you. Devin Smiles Photography, we specialize in stylized senior high school portraits, family photo shoots, business headshots that can be displayed on metals, canvas prints, as well as specialized gifts. We have a great person that's on board with Devin Smiles Photography, Sandra Marie.
I'm Sandra Marie, your professional image consultant with SMR's Pick. I enhance your look from natural to dramatic.
Saints, now is the time for believers to step up and engage your faith in a bold way. Kingdom Faith Apparel brings you premium shirts, headwear, and accessories displaying God's Word to engage believers and non-believers. Short, simple, and easy-to-read messages with inspirational slogans and motivational scriptures. We hope you'll find your inspiration in the many offerings presented on our website. Visit us today at www.kingdomfaithapparel.com. Peace and blessings.
Hi, and welcome back to Vibrant. Listen, put your seatbelt on. We have Kandee Lewis and Kelli Dillon in studio, and we are talking about domestic violence, and they're getting ready to share with us reasons why people stay in those types of situations. So come on back in. So, ladies, our next question is, what are some of the reasons that you guys have found that people remain, in situations where they're being abused or whatever, as you're working with them? What have been some of those reasons?
Again, that's a loaded question.
Okay.
There's so many reasons. People stay because Well, first, let me just say, we can't separate the love
Got it.
from the abuse.
Okay.
So I love this person, and I know that if I am just nicer, if I'm quieter, if I do whatever it is that this person needs me to do, then the abuse will stop.
Okay.
I know this one young lady who her abuser told her that no one ever loved him.
Okay.
So first off, let me say that's a sign.
Okay.
If someone tells you, and they're grown, that no one has ever loved them, that's a sign.
Okay.
That means that they're not lovable.
Wow.
That's what that means. It doesn't mean that no one's ever loved them.
Okay.
It means that they're not lovable. So you can't do anything to make that person love you.
So that's insatiable then.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the children. You want to elaborate on the children?
Yes. Yeah. Before I do, I want to just add a little bit something about, like you said, separating the love and the abuse. There is a cycle of abuse that happens. It goes from the stages of calm to tension, to the explosion, and what we call the honeymoon phase.
Oh my goodness.
So and then what
calm, tension, explosion, back to the honeymoon
phase.
Back to the calm.
Yes.
Okay.
Because after the honeymoon, then everybody's cool, everything, you know, and you think, as what Kandee said, is that I've loved him enough, I've given her enough attention, I've you know, met their needs and their demands. And that is one of the things, is that if I meet their needs and their demands, then we can live in the calm and the honeymoon phase longer. But the sad part is that over time, that time between the actual explosion and abuse, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter.
And isn't that the victim taking the responsibility on themselves for what's happening?
But that is the trick of the abuser, is to make the victim feel like it is their fault and that it is their responsibility in order to make them happy. Like you say, it's insatiable. But also the trick of it is that the catch-22 of it is that even if the victim is figuring out what actually makes the abuser happy, that the abuser is going to switch it in order to keep the victim guessing and getting that power and control.
So it's never, they're always on edge.
Right.
It's never
The victim stays victimized. And sometimes that victim they're in that stress stage right before the violence happens, that it makes them so edgy that they will push and make the violence happen sooner. So once I can get past that,
let's get it
just
on.
hit me
So
and
we
get it
can
over
get
with.
over with and get on back to
the honeymoon in the calm.
Stop yourself.
Yes. Just say what you got to say. Just do what you have to do. Just hit me. Just do it so we can get back, because living in this tension phase before it actually happened is much more severe and much more torturing than the actual abuse itself.
Right. This has been phenomenal. I tell you, it's been enlightening. You guys have educated me. You've inspired me. You pricked my heart, made me cry. You know, the work you guys are doing is just great. And I'm sure that there are those that are going to begin to partner with you guys, you know, even as a result of what you've shared today. And I wanted to give you just a couple of minutes to just say something, you know, to the audience that might inspire someone, might, you know, encourage someone who's dealing with some of the stuff we've talked about, to begin that process out, to reach out. We never know who's suffering in silence.
I just want to say, the first thing I want to say to the survivors or those that are actually still experiencing some form of trauma and abuse, that you are not alone. The trauma, the abuse that you experience will make you feel that no one understands, no one cares, and that you are alone. And that is what the abuse and the experience of it is meant to do, is to isolate you and to bring you down. But to let you know that you're not alone. As you heard, Kandee has had stories. I have had my stories. We work with other women and men who have their stories. And I pray that one day that you will get to a place in surviving and in thriving, that one day you will live to tell your story that would encourage a person at the very place that you are right now, and to help them bring you out I will encourage you to, if you can, safely look to see if there's any resources locally where you're at, to where you can maybe reach out to the hotline, which is, I forgot, I haven't said it's hot, the number is so long, but I think it's 1-800-799 and the word SAFE. It's 1-800 or either 1-888, but I believe it's 1-800-799 and the word SAFE in order for you to reach out and just begin to talk to someone safely, but you're not alone.
So I want to say thank you for this platform to share what's going on. Couple of things. For those of us who love or like someone, and you may suspect that they are in an abusive relationship, don't blame them. Don't shame them. Don't say things like, you're so stupid, you're so dumb, why are you still in that relationship? Because you don't know why. You don't know why. So ask, what can I do to help and support them? But also safeguard yourself that you don't become part of that abuse. Some of us are going through violence and abuse, and you say to yourself, why me? Know that through every trial and tribulation, we need you to come out of it, because as Kelly said, your truth could be someone else's saving grace.
I want to thank both of you for the work that you're doing in the community, and I commend you, because many times people get on the other side of something and they're like, okay, I'm on the other side of it, that's all. But you guys have turned back to empower other women, children, families,
Men,
they're educators, men, so I commend you, and I'm grateful to know that you guys are here in the community doing what you're doing. And I look forward to collaborating with you more in the future as well.
Thank you.
Man, I don't even have to ask you if you have been positively impacted by what you've heard on the topic of domestic violence, as we have been talking with Kandee Lewis and Kelli Dillon. Listen, make a connection with them. You may be interested in volunteering. You may want to become a sponsor, partnering with them somehow. Their information is right there on the screen. Reach out and help them to continue to reach out. And you know what I always say, you were not created to be a carbon copy. So let your unique shine. And we'll see you real soon right here on Vibrant.
And live your best life and do whatever you want. Shake those haters off. You're a nigga so soar and rise above. Shine bright, show all your colors. You're not a carbon copy, so show up what you shine.